Welcome to the 2021 MakeMore Manufacturing Summit. This two-day event highlights technology with an overview of Industry 4.0 and the importance of manufacturing in Florida's overall economy. Florida is home to over 21,000 manufacturers, accounting for over 380,000 high-wage jobs in the state, and also for almost 5% of Florida's gross domestic product. You'll hear from David C. Steeran from the NIST Manufacturing Extension Partnership on how the implementation of Industry 4.0 can benefit all size manufacturing companies, and how the MEP program can assist manufacturers in bringing this technology to bear. And you'll also enjoy an informative keynote presentation from Michael Strong, Senior Director of Flexible and Agile Solutions at Johnson & Johnson, on supply chain strategy and vision for innovation as a competitive advantage. The 2021 MakeMore Manufacturing Summit is hosted by Associated Industries of Florida, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, Career Source Florida, Enterprise Florida, and Florida Makes. And now, here is your host from Florida Makes, June Wolf.
Fortunately, Zoraida has not found her voice yet, but she is on the mend, and you'll see her soon. So it's me, June Wolf, with the pleasure to be your host again, and welcome you to day 2 of the 2021 MakeMore Manufacturing Summit Technology Acceleration segment. Those of you who participated in the live networking got to meet other manufacturing stakeholders from across the state. If you missed the networking, please make sure to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us why you're here today, just like yesterday. We will have live networking again for another 30 minutes at the end of today's program. Yesterday, we had great speakers on Industry 4.0, technology at work, and many other technology-related subjects you all were able to enjoy. Thank you also for the questions you submitted, and we'll be getting those answered. These next 2 hours will be filled with the new information from great speakers around the topic of technology acceleration. After that, you will have another opportunity to connect with fellow attendees live on Zoom. Before we get into the program, one more time, let me go over some housekeeping that will make your virtual experience smoother. Those of you that have been with us all segments, I know you probably are an old hand at this technology, but for those of you who are new or those of you that need a refresher, I'm going to repeat just some of it. If you are having technical difficulties, please click on the yellow square with the question mark found at the bottom of your screen. You can also email events@floridamakes.com with any questions, or our team at the studio by downloading the event support contact sheet from the resource box. Or even easier, submit your questions through the Q&A box on the left of your screen. Anything you submit through that Q&A box will be sent privately to our production team here in the studio. If you'd like to interact with other attendees, you'll need to click on the group chat icon, which is the icon on the far right of the engagement tools at the bottom of your screen. It is through this chat that you'll be able to participate when opportunities come up later in the day. If the media player where you are watching limits itself or gets smaller, in order to open it, simply click on the red icon with the triangle inside the square that looks like the play button. You can also manipulate the size of the media player inside the console and move it around the screen. If you are watching from a large monitor, sometimes the layout gets distorted and you want to adjust where your engagement tools are placed. You know from yesterday that the sessions are being recorded. and you'll be able to view them later on demand. They're also being recorded because TaxWatch will listen over and over to your comments, and they're going to be writing a report summarizing our discussions today and yesterday and throughout the entire summit, and then issuing recommendations for 2022. The main sponsor for the third segment of MakeMore Manufacturing Summit is Kaufman Rawson. So we'd like to show a video that they sent us about their practice.
Preparing reports can be time-consuming and expensive. You can have an analyst spend hours querying a database and preparing the data, or you can subscribe to a software service. But the trade-off of spending extensive time or paying high fees is less than ideal. Fortunately, robotic process automation uses software to automate activities usually performed by people. When designed properly, bots can perform an activity in less time and more reliably than people. And automation of tasks means that people can focus their time doing the more critical and judgmental analysis. Kaufman Rawson can help you gain the benefits of automation. Are you ready to start doing more with less? Contact Kaufman Rawson today.
Kaufman and Rawson, the tech segment sponsor, Synovus, also the Florida Economic Development Council, and the rest of the organizations you see on the screen behind me. We opened day 2 of the MakeMore Manufacturing Summit Technology Acceleration segment by hearing about Industry 4.0 at the national level. Our speaker, David Steeren, is the Division Chief of Extension Services at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST for short, Manufacturing Extension Partnership, MEP for short. As we noted yesterday, the Florida Makes Network is a statewide, industry-led, public-private partnership operated by an alliance of Florida's regional manufacturers associations. Florida Makes is also Florida's official representative of the NIST MEP network, which David represents. David will discuss today how the implementation of Industry 4.0 by manufacturers can benefit all size manufacturing companies, from the very large to the very small, and how the technical sophistication of a manufacturer can be a unique competitive advantage in marketplaces and supply chains. He will also highlight how the MEP program, which Florida Makes represents in our state, provides manufacturers with awareness of and technological assistance with a diverse array of Industry 4.0 applications. At the end of his presentation today, David will introduce our keynote speaker, Michael Strong Sr. from Johnson & Johnson, who will introduce the World Economic Forum Lighthouse Program and its values. But first, please, let's welcome David Steeren.
Hello, my name is David Steeren. I'm a Division Chief for Extension Services at the National Institute of Standards and Technology Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you today about small U.S. manufacturers and advanced manufacturing technology. Today, I'm going to talk to you about several things relating to SMMs and advanced manufacturing technology. And I'm going to start by giving you a perspective at the national level from the United States government, what we're seeing, what's happening across the country. From there, I'll talk about things that we've learned within the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. I'll talk a little bit about advanced manufacturing technology with a specific emphasis on Industry 4.0. And then I'll tell you more about the MEP program and how our program can help SMMs in the adoption of advanced manufacturing technology. So at the national level, currently there have been multiple United States national and economic security and public health priorities that have been identified across many industries. And these priorities involve a diverse array of critical technologies and key products. And from the United States government standpoint, A lot of these national priorities are aimed at increasing domestic sourcing. So from the standpoint of the United States government, there have been several executive orders that have been initiated by the Biden administration, as well as the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, that call out specifically a handful of industries as priority industries for the United States. These include semiconductors, critical materials, pharmaceuticals, high capacitance batteries, defense, food, and medical equipment and supplies. As part of these priorities, this doesn't just include the industries, but it also includes both those critical technologies, the needed technologies, as well as the products that are made by those industries, and also a high recognition on the availability of a skilled workforce. From that national perspective, there's also a realization that the technological sophistication that's typically resident within U.S. SMMs lags that of large companies. And since nearly 99% of all U.S. manufacturing establishments that operate in our country are in fact SMMs, this creates multiple challenges and constraints for SMMs as well as for U.S. manufacturing supply chains overall. With respect to the MEP program, what we've seen is that SMMs particularly need assistance to bridge the gaps that exist in their own state of practice within their own factories and businesses, and the state of the art that's available to them in key product technology and industry areas, and that their competitors globally are in fact implementing. And in addition to the assistance that they need, our program has learned, and this is acutely known, that decreasing risk in deploying advanced technology is critical to the SMM adoption of that technology. So now I'm going to tell you just for a second about the MEP program. The program is managed at the federal level by NIST. Again, MEP stands for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. We were created in 1988, and we operate an extension-based nationwide network of non-federal centers in every U.S. state and Puerto Rico that provide daily hands-on technical assistance in factories to approximately 30,000 SMMs each year. Our overall program objective is to enhance competitiveness, productivity, and technological performance in the United States manufacturing. The takeaway here is that our MEP program, through our nationwide network of MEP centers, we work across the nation every day to assist SMMs with technology adoption, including right here in the state of Florida. Let me shift gears and talk for just a second about advanced manufacturing technology with a specific emphasis on Industry 4.0. You may be thinking, why would an SMM want to invest in and implement Industry 4.0 technologies? It's really about the fact that these technologies, they optimize factory operations. And by optimizing factory operations, they enable new capabilities for factories and for enterprises overall to be smart factories. And at the end of the day, this is about increasing productivity and competitiveness. When you look at Industry 4.0, there's a collection of roughly 9 individual discrete technologies that comprise Industry 4.0. If you just look at one thread of those technologies, that being digital manufacturing, studies have shown that there are significant benefits associated with implementing these technologies. And these technology benefits through this implementation, they apply whether the size of the company is a small manufacturer, a medium manufacturer, or a large manufacturer. So looking in terms of the resource and process productivity increases, studies have shown benefits on the order of 5%. With respect to labor productivity increase in the space of engineering, studies have shown upwards of 55% improvement. Also, there are significant benefits relating to reduction in time to market. Here you see benefits that achieve 50%. Maintenance costs can be reduced by 40%. Costs associated with quality can be reduced by up to 20%. inventory carrying costs reduced by up to 50%. And a big one for machine downtime is that machine downtime can in fact be reduced by 50%. So from a manufacturer standpoint, especially a small manufacturer, seeing those types of benefits and thinking about and going through the process of implementing advanced manufacturing technology in Industry 4.0, there are a number of challenges that manufacturers encounter. What platform should you choose? What is the initial investment, which can sometimes be high? What is your workforce? What is your digital training and culture? This is a particular problem, issue, I should say, that's acute within small manufacturers, as I mentioned earlier, whose technical sophistication typically lags that of larger manufacturers. Because you're connecting so much of your operation together in a network sense, the notion of cybersecurity is a very real and important aspect with respect to your proprietary information, as well as your process and operational technology information. There are issues associated with intellectual property. Defining ownership in a collaborative product development environment is something that many companies encounter very frequently. The idea of data analytics integration. How do you close the loop, and being able to do this completely and fully to enable a feedback situation where you can really harvest the information that's collected through data analytics and use it to your benefit. And then just simply within an organization, a lack of coordination that can exist among and between various departments and divisions. So realizing all those challenges, what are some practical ways in which small to medium-sized manufacturers can approach advanced manufacturing technology adoption? First, we would say take a measured approach. Don't try to eat the elephant all at once. And as you begin to implement, make sure that you have very specific target goals set out that are achievable and that you can measure before you go on to the next step of the process. Consistent with that notion of not trying to eat the elephant all at once, start with the subsystem implementation. Learn from that implementation. If it works, expand that implementation to other aspects of your operation. If it doesn't work, learn from it, adjust, and then consider re-implementation. And once again, target very specific problems with measurable impact. That is very key. Know what you're trying to solve, know what you're trying to do, and measure it as you implement. I introduced the MEP program as a program that helps on a daily basis across the country small manufacturers with their adoption of advanced technology. We can provide through our program and our nationwide network of centers experience support to help small manufacturers as you go through this process. In ways in which our MEP centers typically work with small companies to do this, begin by starting with an assessment of the company's situation. And that assessment will take a fairly holistic look at all of the aspects of the company's operations, from the business environment to the supply chain environment to the in-factory processes to the financials, as well as to the customer and the market outputs. Based on that assessment, recommendations will be presented that identify opportunities where technology may solve problems or in fact generate the greatest benefit. Once those recommendations are put forward, MEP centers can help a company develop a business case to actually begin down the path of implementation. And when the implementation actually begins, the MEP center can be there with the company to walk the company through that implementation, very often working with trusted third-party providers that add to the expertise that the MEP centers bring to the table, and rigorously measure the results throughout the process. My final slide highlights the fact that the MEP National Network, as I said earlier, has a technical assistance center in every U.S. state and Puerto Rico. These technical assistance centers are comprised of about 1,500 manufacturing experts that operate around the country to help companies every day, again, by the tens of thousands, to implement and adopt solutions. Oftentimes, these solutions are based on technology to their company problems. Here in the state of Florida, the MEP Center is Florida Makes. Kevin Carr is the CEO of Florida Makes, and you can access more information about Florida Makes by visiting floridamakes.com. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker for today, Michael Strong, the Senior Director of Flexible and Agile Solutions at Johnson & Johnson Enterprise Supply Chain. Michael has responsibility for technology scouting, sourcing, development, and deployment for the Johnson & Johnson supply chain, including final mile and innovation. Michael has accountability for understanding future trends, process opportunities, and customer insights with the goal of delivering innovative solutions across the end-to-end supply chains of Johnson & Johnson operating companies globally. Prior to joining Johnson & Johnson Enterprise Supply Chain, Michael held various technical and business leadership positions in Johnson & Johnson Healthcare Systems, Johnson & Johnson Vision Care Research and Development, and Supply Chain. Michael has been acknowledged both internally and externally as an innovation leader and technology expert. Michael is a patent holder and has led teams that delivered more than a dozen new products and manufacturing platforms to commercial scale, creating over $5 billion in annual value. Michael and his team's work have been published and recognized internationally. Michael is recognized within the Johnson & Johnson family as an expert in product development, innovation, and scale-up, and as such, he has been assigned to various independent review teams. Michael will discuss with you today a real-world Florida-based company that has been on the leading edge of technology development and deployment. He will discuss how Johnson & Johnson has realized many of the benefits I referenced during my presentation, and that Johnson & Johnson are willing partners through the MEP program and our MEP centers to coach emerging manufacturers on their journey, reducing risk, speeding deployments, and helping accelerate competitiveness.
The fourth industrial revolution technology is really changing the game.
There will be a fundamental shift in what consumers want and need.
They want it faster, they want it customized, they want it personalized.
So all of your value chain has to be designed accordingly.
Almost all companies are doing something around digital and analytics, but many of them have not really found a way to scale.
Companies are stuck in what we defined as the pilot purgatory.
They are trying thousand flower blooms approaches and are not very focused on how they are really creating early business impact.
For the very first time, advanced manufacturing technologies are helping companies transform the value chains end to end and develop new business models. Lighthouses are the most advanced factories in the world, so are points of lights for the broader community of manufacturers.
We define by 3W. One is a work reduction, how to be leaner, and one is a waste reduction, how to be greener, and worry reduction, how to become worry-free.
We are changing almost all of our product definition, configuration management, ERP system to be faster. That's the thing.
They are hyper-connected, which allows them to have all the devices synchronized and be able to make the most out of the data.
We decided early stage to focus on robotics, on sensorics, on analytics, and on visualization, all that embedded in an end-to-end connectivity environment.
We are more efficient in terms of maintenance, in terms of deliverable, in terms of reliability.
We have seen benefits in terms of cost savings. We have seen opportunities to accelerate product introductions. We have seen the capability to actually upskill our people.
Every year, we train our workers on data sharing, information, performance improvement in production. And then we train them on the usage of the technical tools, the digital tools.
We want to leverage digital to augment their capabilities, eliminating the unsafe, the repetitive, and non-value added tasks of the supply chain.
There's huge benefits on the sustainability standpoint for being a lighthouse. We're able to very accurately understand what our waste is. And that's not just material waste, but also energy waste.
There's a nimbleness and there's an efficiency that comes with applying these principles that today make business sense. They will soon be required in an economy, in an environment, in a world that is cycling much faster than it is today.
There is room for companies to be working together, learning from each other, and establishing new partnerships.
Stay tuned for this morning's keynote address.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with the group today. As David mentioned, today you will see how Johnson & Johnson Vision Care is a real-world demonstration of all the data regarding results and development strategies that he referenced. You'll realize that Johnson & Johnson, in conjunction with the World Economic Forum and your local MEPs, are committed to supporting smaller businesses accelerate their innovation journey. We will review how innovation is an imperative for Johnson & Johnson and how recognition through the World Economic Forum process is creating opportunities for us to give back to the communities we serve. Today, we will specifically discuss the J&J overall innovation strategy as a driver for our ability to serve customers and communities, briefly touch on the World Economic Forum Lighthouse program, have a short virtual walkthrough of some of our operational technologies, finish by some results and ecosystem investment comment. Johnson & Johnson is the world's most broad-based healthcare company and has a large global footprint. We are unique in the industry with our breadth of medical device, consumer product, and pharmaceutical production. The breadth of manufacturing processes, geographical network, and variation in commercial strategy is certainly a complexity that has driven us to embrace Industry 4.0 capabilities at various levels across the operation. We believe these capabilities free up value that we can use to improve healthcare affordability and support our communities. In fact, we give back over $1.5 billion in philanthropic programs to invest in our communities while still delivering business growth. These programs include educational investment, environmental programs, and healthcare partnerships. At Johnson & Johnson, we manage all of our investment and decisions based on the guiding principles of our credo. The J&J credo helps focus the business first on the patient, then our employees and communities, and finally on our shareholders. For over 75 years, we've been able to demonstrate that if you focus on patients, employees, and our communities, the shareholders will always receive a fair return. We further understand that speed and efficiency is a way we can provide life-saving and sustaining products such as vaccines, ventilator splitters, or sanitizing products because humanity is waiting. Our focus on increasing the speed we innovate, creating agility in our supply chain, and driving end-to-end value will enable us to ensure we stand ready to serve humanity for the next 100 years. You may ask, what is the World Economic Lighthouse Network? Why does it matter to me? Hopefully the introduction video gave a strong fundamental understanding, but we can go a bit deeper. The Lighthouse Network is a program that is co-established with the World Economic Forum and McKinsey Consulting. The network is comprised of 54 facilities globally, and as of last year, only 5 in the United States. There are 2 types of lighthouses: 4-wall factory lighthouses and end-to-end value chain lighthouses. Johnson & Johnson are honored to have been recognized with 4 value chains as lighthouses globally and locally. The Vision Care facility in Jacksonville, Florida has been actually awarded an advanced lighthouse designation. You will see we, Vision Care, and the state of Florida are one of a very small domestic group of companies and states that have gained that recognition. Lighthouses are manufacturing operations or supply chains that have developed, deployed, and operationalized multiple technologies from the 4th Industrial Revolution. These technologies include robotics, vision systems, the Internet of Things, advanced sensors and data analytics, and many, many more. The broad deployment of these capabilities have enabled stronger customer connectivity through digitization, more agile manufacturing and supply systems, and advanced analytics to deeply understand demand signals, process opportunities, and our network design. The World Economic Forum has understood that leading into the pandemic and certainly coming out of it, we clearly saw a shift in supply chain needs. This included more agility driven by customer demands, improved resilience, speed and efficiency, and finally, a significant shift to ensure a much smaller ecological footprint. The World Economic Forum has a mission to reduce gentrification globally and ensure a sustainable supply of workers and resources to improve life for all humanity. The assessment we undertook includes metrics on environmental sustainability, partnership with training programs, and impact influence on the community, both local and global. Johnson & Johnson operations in Jacksonville, we have broadly deployed technologies across the supply chain. Johnson & Johnson Vision Care is manufacturer of the AccuView brand of contact lenses, the #1 selling brand of lenses worldwide. The business has a long history in the North Florida area starting in the early 1960s. As the company grew, they acquired a new process to mass produce contact lenses in a highly repeatable way. Our technology journey started with this process change 40 years ago and has since created a variety of products and packaging configurations. We currently offer a broad portfolio of products that are becoming more personalized to serve more unmet needs of our consumers globally. You will see here a variety of our robotics and material handling applications that enable a sustainable supply of product during the pandemic. We have invested in fully digital integration of our production lines, order fulfillment processes, and e-commerce connections with our customers. We further have utilized technology as safety improvements as we have an aging demographic in the US and globally. Our ability to partner with global technology suppliers to drive capital costs down and improve troubleshooting systems has created a manufacturing process that has very few human touches from raw materials to packed orders and distribution. In fact, if you were on site, you would see there are no designed human contact points within the manufacturing process. Due to previous investments in these technologies, we were able to maintain service to our customers through the last year and a half of COVID-19 with reduced staffing, virtual connectivity to production lines, and systems like a virtual control tower for demand and production planning. Many of these capabilities were originally established to ensure rapid decision-making and cost-effective reproducible manufacturing, but were quickly recognized as critical when many associates were not able to be on site. While we were very lucky to have invested in technology to digitally interact with our customers, we quickly found that customers that were late adopters were significantly impacted due to this lack of connectivity, while early adopters were able to sustain service to their customers remotely. In fact, with the instant shift to online and direct customer delivery locations, we were able to service an increase of over 25% of orders through these previously installed systems. We also have leaned into advanced manufacturing skills training. We have created a three-way relationship with the local underserved high school, the local state college, and ourselves. Through this relationship, we offer internships to students that are in joint high school and college courses in technology, electronics, and computer systems. This program is helping create a sustainable pipeline of technicians as we continue to struggle sourcing the total volume of trained resources we need. You may be saying to yourself, that all sounds good, but what does it mean? So for us, in addition to recognition globally as a technology lighthouse, we are proud of additional recognition for our supply chain, as well as business results. As David had mentioned, NIST and the MEP network have data that suggests significant double-digit impact from these fourth industrial revolution investments across the value chain. We could discuss many metrics. I thought we would focus on one of the most important ones, cash. As you can see through our journey starting in 2012, when we really accelerated innovation investment, we have consistently improved cash flow year after year and are up almost 70% in less than 10 years. That is a business we can all appreciate because not only is it about sales growth and cost savings, but total cash flow. This shows we impacted sales, operational expense, inventory levels, generally everything that was on David's slide. While business results are most critical, we are proud to be recognized as the #1 healthcare supply chain by Gartner and continue to strive to improve against our peer set. We are further honored to have moved from number 23 in the Gartner ranking in 2012 to number 3 against all classes of supply chains globally. We will continue to drive improvements until we enter the Masters area, part of the Supply Chain Hall of Fame. This external recognition and benchmarking help us validate we have a resilient supply chain to serve our customers. Ideally, at this point, you have seen the validation of the value David mentioned in the actual experience at Johnson & Johnson. But I would also like to reinforce some of David's data through additional research partners of ours have completed as industry benchmarks. Across all industries and all countries, innovation drives business, community, and regional growth and results. We'll take a few minutes to review some data that shows businesses, academic settings, and regions have all seen similar improvements through this innovation journey. Now, this slide is one of my favorites, as it is something we should all be asking ourselves every day. The world is changing. How about you? We know the world has changed. Not to date myself, but no more corded telephone, 500-pound TV, local hardware stores, small town independent doctors for my health. Everything has changed, and the pandemic continues to punish those that haven't adopted and rewarded those that have. There is not an area of life that isn't changed. Educators have a need to deliver more STEM curriculum and find ways to create a pipeline of technology-ready workers. Manufacturers and distributors must be more responsive, agile, and effective. For the entire value chain, the U.S. learned hard lessons in 2020 about sustainable supply of consumer staples such as toilet paper, cleaning supplies, and of course, medical devices such as masks and ventilator splitters. In fact, in what world would we have envisioned Johnson & Johnson converting Listerine mouthwash production to hand sanitizing lotion within 7 days? How about 3D printing capabilities redirected to make mass production ventilator splitters in less than a week? Even with the investment we made in our supply chain, we have never had to pivot so quickly. And what about hospitals? How much do we learn about the criticality of hospital supply chains and visibility to critical material? Finally, governments around the world are all beginning to understand with remote capabilities, it is a truly global competition for workers, products, and services. How is the Florida government reconsidering investment direction to ensure we have a strong workforce from PhDs and engineers to technicians and craftspeople? How are we considering regionalization of supply to ensure access and availability? It is critical as we consider innovation that we don't think of robots and advanced vision system as the opportunity. The opportunity is everywhere. Big data, digital connectivity, remote work, cybersecurity. It's often easy for people here today to consider yourself not in the innovation because you don't see a connection to a robot, but it's not a robot, it's everything, every day. And we know innovation is critical. Here are a few charts from McKinsey that demonstrate the industry value created through an innovation journey. This is benchmark data across a large competitive set, all of which show tangible business acceleration through innovation. Data suggests that innovators have the ability to set aspirational goals and choose resources that make a difference. They're able to recruit top talent and accelerate growth. Top companies further have carve-outs in the budget process directed at innovation. They see innovation funding callouts as a way to ensure these resources are directed to the biggest future opportunities and not redirected to daily firefighting. Finally, all of that culminates in tangible business growth results. In fact, data suggests that the more broadly deployed innovations are across the value chain, the better the financial result. This chart shows almost 2.5 times the financial results from companies with a broad footprint of deployed innovation versus those with minimum or no innovation deployed. Now, what about jobs? Full employment is a critical metric for government and society. There was a report out several weeks ago regarding latest job openings and available labor. This report informed us there are more than 1 million more jobs than workers. Often the narrative of the risk of job loss overshadows the fact that acceleration of growth and new innovative products create staffing needs that far outpace stagnant business. A British study showed that small innovative firms brought on staffing at 2 times the pace as non-innovators. This was driven by their growth, which would have been completely unmanageable with traditional staffing models. In fact, a US study in 2014 pointed to the fact that technology helped address labor shortages even 8 years ago. And finally, as the group moves to the next phase of the program, I would leave this Venn diagram with them as a point of focus. In mature, stagnant businesses, technology can drive efficiency through labor reduction. But in the top 2 areas of the diagram, we can see that the opportunities through product and process innovation, growth drives the need for staffing increases, not decreases. With this as a background, it reinforces the need to have a diverse, equitable, and inclusive strategy to create enough human capital to grow. We must throw a very broad net to ensure we have the total volume of resources and a broad perspective of thoughts to drive true innovation. And then the ecosystem around a successful business and regional growth strategy. It is important to understand at the end of the day, companies cannot drive this alone since there are training and academic needs. Then, as David had mentioned, innovation that is too risky to try without support. And finally, ongoing vendor support systems that create an environment business can thrive in. There is no one pillar of the ecosystem that will thrive without the entire system. Much like food, water, sunlight, and space are all required for a plant to flourish, innovation needs the same environmental support. This slide will most likely be provocative in the current environment, but one that I think is critical we are transparent. I have about 3 million miles and an airport annual run rate of about 250,000 miles per year. Why is that? Well, we have many innovation centers globally, and most are in regions that are focused on winning the manufacturing game. We work with Singapore, Ireland, Israel, all of the large international groups, and some US-based organizations to de-risk the investment of cutting-edge work. Why does that matter? Well, let's first take a look at the US versus China. In these graphs, you will see China, and of course I could pull data for several other countries, but China has accelerated its investment in a nonlinear fashion, while the US has continued only incremental investment in innovation. I'm sure many are aware of China's ambition to lead the world in technology and high-value manufacturing, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. On the other side, let's take a look at some data around US investment in innovation. You can see we are remaining basically flat as a percent to GDP, but investments have significantly shifted. Today, industry has stepped forward to self-fund innovation at a rate 3 times that of the US government. As you can imagine, global businesses have to manage investment risk and have the means to partner with governments that are focused on winning this innovation and manufacturing game. I would suggest this is an area the US and the state of Florida should consider as it informs the strategy of high-value manufacturing growth. How about our schools and training programs? As you can see in some of the attached graphs, we are not winning the game of STEM recruitment compared to global benchmarks and current manufacturing need. And while much conversation occurs around traditional college and university programs, there is an equivalent surge in demand for vocational skills training. With the broad deployment of technology, we will need significantly more electricians, plumbers, welders, IT technicians, and of course, engineering technicians. We should consider the entire life cycle and integration of technology as new programs are being developed. There are now urgent needs for improved cybersecurity techs in the world as the world becomes more connected. In conclusion, I would leave with some parting thoughts to inform future sessions for this team. The path to success in a future founded in Industry 4.0 capabilities is a joint journey between users, suppliers, government investment, and academic systems. Areas and regions of the world that have created a broad manufacturing base have taken a leadership position in considering investment in high-risk development programs, broad vocational programs through advanced STEM education, and ensured a strong base of supplier support to enable growth through innovation. If there's one thing I know, Florida is uniquely positioned to win in this space with great capabilities, infrastructure, and an ease to do business. And ideally, today's discussion reinforces that successful results for a business equate to a successful result for citizens, communities, and customers. Johnson & Johnson's credo guides us to ensure we are stewards of all stakeholders we serve, and we should consider all of these future investments thoughts can be win-win. Okay, well, it looks like we've had some questions come in as I've been speaking. So let me field a few. We have about 10 or 15 minutes that we can go through some questions. And any questions that we don't get to live, we'll make sure we do some follow-up through Florida Makes, and we'll get back to everybody else. We have a really good group of questions that have come in. So the first question, you mentioned the joint education programs. Can you tell us a little more about that? Yeah, so Johnson & Johnson is really pulling very hard on the community in North Florida for technical capabilities for technicians. In fact, we do a lot of recruiting for our military members who come out. Luckily, we have a few bases here in the Jacksonville area, so we are able to recruit a significant number of people from the military. But that's still, the military retirement's still clearly not enough for us. So Abe Alangada is one of my business partners who works more directly with it. But this program was stood up with Englewood High School, which is one of those truly underserved high schools. They had a graduation rate of, I believe, about 60%, and really in a tough area as far as investment. That program with Englewood and the Duval County Public High Schools and Florida State College in Jacksonville is jointly with us developed hands-on training, some basic advanced math and science for physics. And we actually use those kids on the production line as internships. When they graduate with the program, they end up with an associate's degree in manufacturing engineering technology. And it's really been a big success for us. And it's been a great opportunity for us to invest in an underserved community to increase graduation rates, as well as ensure that they have real life job training so they can onboard directly into our operation. Okay, the second one. I understand how a company with the resources of J&J can do all of this, but how does a small company without a lot of capital start? So another great question. So a lot of people believe that since J&J spends about $12 or $13 billion a year in research, that we have very deep pockets for this type of work. Actually, we are always very capital constrained, and Johnson & Johnson is a product company. So we really spend the lion's share of that $12-ish billion on new vaccines, new drug products, new medical devices. new things that really change people's lives. And in supply chain, believe it or not, we actually have a lot of the same issues that a small company has. So we've done a lot of work to partner with companies to do technology as a service. That's a big strategy that we're following now, is finding companies that don't make us buy it, but let us sort of do a lease or technology as a service. We also really focus on partnerships and grants with some of the government around the world to help de-risk some of these projects. And we, in fact, for one of our order fulfillment technologies in North America, we're in a partnership. We received a grant from the ARM consortium. And so there's actually a lot of ways that we can help coach, but the big thing is the capital intensity is not what you would think. And a lot of businesses are doing technology as a service now. Okay, are there any other J&J facilities seeking Lighthouse designation? So yes, first of all, as a strategy, we are really trying to get a significant number of our sites into the Lighthouse network. First of all, it's good recognition for us and good benchmarking opportunities where we can get challenged by the McKinsey team and the World Economic Forum about how advanced is our supply chain. And this visibility, as we mentioned with the Florida location, but globally, it really gives us an opportunity to open our doors to other smaller companies and academia and government to come in and understand how we did it, learn from us and share. So we do have a cadence that we'd like to stay on top of for getting more lighthouses. We in fact hope to have some positive news here in September. We have applied for 2 more lighthouses, one in the US on our medical device supply chain and how we interface with hospitals, and one in London. That one I actually also helped deliver, and that is in one of our order fulfillment centers. So there is a lot more to come, we hope. What is the morale like with production employees at the Jacksonville facility with all that automation? So that's a really great question. And we talked about staffing and how often it can be seen as a risk. People can see automation as a risk. We really try to focus on using associates for what they're really great for, which is their brain power. And we really try to use automation for highly repetitive, high-risk work. And so our associates actually think that automation is great because they know it's very difficult for us to downsize because we run very, very lean. We focus on value-added activity for the human resources. And as we continue to grow, we just, again, back to the first point about the education, we just cannot staff enough people in North Florida. The business continues to grow at a very rapid rate. And so actually the technicians and the people who are on site in Jacksonville is a great opportunity for job security, as well as making sure they get home safe every day and don't develop ergonomic risk, lifting risks, things like that. I guess we have, I think, time for maybe one more. So what is the most rewarding aspect of your position? So for me, it's probably a few things, but the most rewarding is the opportunity to use this technology to help really deliver urgent life-saving products to our customers. You know, we really learned during the pandemic that if we didn't have some of these technologies deployed, all of the information you heard about the stress on the hospital systems would have been much worse. If you could just imagine if we hadn't had these technologies to be able to continue to supply hospitals during that pandemic, I can't even imagine, you know, where we would be today. So the number one thing is just the honor to be able to use these technologies to make a sustainable supply chain for life-sustaining and life-enhancing products. And then I'd say the other thing is just the excitement of being able to be on the cutting edge of technology and really see how these technologies are evolving to continue to drive US-based supply chains to the front of the manufacturing capabilities globally. And it's really exciting to be around some of those types of activities. So I think that's about the time we have today. So I want to just say thanks again, and all of the questions that you had forwarded that we didn't get to, we will certainly field offline. And thanks for the opportunity to speak with you.
Good morning, everyone.
World Economic Forum Lighthouse Program and its values, and also how Johnson & Johnson became a part of it. All manufacturers will benefit from a supply chain strategy as the one you discussed, and the value of embracing Industry 4.0 as a business growth enabler. Thanks again. Our final panel today, and for the Technology Acceleration segment, is the Business Climate Panel, sponsored by Lockheed Martin, a panel made up of manufacturing associates. Florida's manufacturing sector faced many challenges during the past year due to COVID-19, the pandemic, and we're all so well aware of that in Florida. The Florida legislature responded to the creation of the first ever Florida Manufacturing and Supply Chain Caucus, which will host its first meeting on November 15th at Florida's Manufacturing Advocacy Days in Tallahassee. Our next panel will discuss our state's business climate and the ecosystem needs to do, and what the ecosystem needs to do to embrace technology adaptation and to increase growth. Florida Makes board member Bain Beecher from PGT, and yes, I have all new PGT impact windows in my house to date, will moderate this conversation. Dale Ketchum from Space Florida, the Honorable Jeff Brandes, Florida Senator, and Tom Feeney from Associated Industries of Florida are all advocates of manufacturing and work to advance manufacturing in Florida. So right now, I'd like to roll the Lockheed Martin video. Okay, Bain, thanks so much for moderating the panel today, and we'll turn it right over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Florida MakeMore Manufacturing Summit panel, which is focused on workforce and technology, and specifically around the policy engagement piece as it pertains to workforce and technology and manufacturing. My name is Bain Beecher, and I'm your moderator today. I joined this panel from PGT Industries, where I serve in a senior manufacturing and operations position. I also serve on the board of the Sarasota Manatee Manufacturing Association, as well as serve as vice chair on the board of Florida Makes. Joining me today is Dale Ketchum, who serves as Space Florida's Vice President of Government and External Relations. In this role, Dale utilizes existing and developing networks to advantage the state of Florida as a recognized leader in the exploration, national security, and commercial space marketplace through innovation, collaboration, and influence. He has spent over 30 years at Kennedy Space Center, working with a variety of public and private organizations. In addition, we have Speaker Tom Feeney, who serves as the president and CEO of AIF, where he and the AIF team work to foster an economic climate in Florida that's conducive to the growth, development, and welfare of industry and business and the people in the state of Florida. Before joining AIF in 2011, Speaker Feeney served in the 24th Congressional District of Florida for 6 years. He also served in the House, Florida House, for 10 years, during which he was elected Speaker. Also joining us is Senator Jeff Brandes, who has been serving us in the state of Florida and a legislator since 2010, with 2 years in the House of Representatives, and since 2012 in the state Senate, representing Tampa Bay's 24th district. Senator Brandis is viewed as a pragmatic leader and embraces innovative technologies, brings creative solutions to the problem facing Tampa Bay, and with particular interest in transportation, Senator Brandis sponsored a bill bringing Google's autonomous vehicle technology to Florida, where it's currently being tested. In addition to serving in Tallahassee, Senator Brandis also served in the military in Iraq, so we want to thank him for his service, and we want to thank you all for joining us today. Welcome. From a background standpoint, Florida is preparing for a time of unprecedented change. By 2030, we'll be home to 26 million residents and one of the most diverse populations in the world. Technology and innovation are disrupting every industry and community. Our markets for goods, services, and ideas, and our competition for talent, customers, investment, and market share are becoming global at an accelerated pace. Florida can take advantage of these trends and become the leading U.S. state in the 21st century, a place marked by global competitiveness, prosperity, and a vibrant and resilient community. But to achieve that vision in another 9 years will require some bold targets, thoughtful strategies, and commitment to action. We're taking the opportunity today to touch bases on where we are progressing towards this 2030 goal of being one of the top states in the country and a location in the world where manufacturing and technology and innovation is applauded, and want to kind of get a touch base on where we are relative to workforce and technology. And so first layer of questioning, I will target to Speaker Feeney. So what is the current business climate and current business perspective on technology, specifically surrounding our workforce, and how we're developing that the technology and how our workforce is coming together with that? So in other words, do you have a sense from business that we're moving in the right direction, that we're going to have the right talent in place in our workforce to support what we need? Is the issue of workforce keeping up on the cutting edge, so to speak? And when we think about from a SWOT analysis, where does highly skilled workforce land?
Well, Bain, first of all, thank you and good morning. I'm delighted to join Senator Brandis and Dale Ketchum and you. I want to thank Florida Makes. This is, I think, their third or fourth MakeMore annual summit, and it's a terrific enterprise. Associated Industries of Florida, amongst other things, is the State Manufacturing Association. So we work with the National Association of Manufacturers that takes a look at these issues from a national perspective, but we're focused on Florida at Associated Industries of Florida. We have a great partnership with Florida Makes, and I want to thank their team and Bain, your leadership, both with your company and also with Bain. I would tell you, with respect to the incredible disruption of the economy based on technology, and then you overlay that with a pandemic and all of the challenges it produces, we have gone through an extraordinary quantum leap in dealing with challenges that are sort of unprecedented, and we'll continue to do that. I do want to say, because we're going to talk about challenges in workforce in Florida, we've got a long way to go. There's a huge mismatch between the needs of a high-skilled workforce that does manufacturing, technical skills, STEM careers. We're now losing hospital workers, and it's going to be harder to recruit because of the challenges that COVID-19 has presented to us. But there is some good news in Florida. We've done massive K-12 reform, starting with Governor Jeb Bush. We've had great success in that area. U.S. News and World Report says that our college system, state college system, is the best in the country. But we have a long way to go. The skills mismatch and the lack of technically skilled and high-skilled workers is national. It's not just a Florida problem. So we're not here to criticize Florida, but there is an extraordinary gap in Florida between where we want to be in terms of the technology and skills-based students that come out and preparing them for the workforce. And we're nowhere close, Bane, to matching the needs of the business community, especially in high wage, high skilled jobs like manufacturing. We're nowhere near where we need to be. Our competitors are, in many cases, not much better off. But a final thought is that when I started my political career in 1990, Florida didn't want to be a manufacturing state. It typically meant to a lot of voters and political leaders, coal stacks, dirt, assembly line jobs. And nowadays, high skilled, high wage, it's about almost twice the average salary that Floridians have. So there are two things that companies that want to expand in Florida or move to Florida need in the manufacturing area. And the number one is workforce. And then second is supply chain. We're working on both of those. I know Senator Brandis is. We partner with Space Florida all the time. And we know there's a challenge, and it's a big challenge. But if Florida gets it right, we're going to go from the 32nd out of 50 states in manufacturing per capita income, and we can get in top 5 or 10 in 10 years.
Thank you, Speaker Feeney. So Dale, from your standpoint, dealing specifically with the space industry, how would you categorize Florida's readiness to meet that challenge? With what's happening in the space sector, are we leading? Are we lagging? Where would you put us?
Well, we're definitely better off than we were. I think it's important to recognize that our primary competitors in the commercial space marketplace domestically are Alabama, Texas, and Colorado. And all of those states bring a better history of manufacturing, particularly Alabama. They've been doing that for a century and more. So they bring institutionally, as part of their governance and their culture, a capacity and an understanding of what you need to do to train a workforce. Texas is similar. Colorado is a little bit different. They are light years ahead of us, but primarily because they have been the primary recipients of NASA's science budget going into primarily University of Colorado in Boulder, consistently decade after decade after decade. And that has then generated a lot of small businesses that have spun off as a result of that investment in basic research. And then the primes came in to take advantage of this huge mix of talent from the small businesses. Florida is distinct and unique in that we are growing rapidly our manufacturing capability. And Tom was correct. We didn't usually think of that as something we wanted to cultivate. And now we're aggressively after it because we recognize it's not dirty, it's clean, it's high wage, it's high skilled, and it's very much what the economic destiny of this country is going to be founded upon. So if we're going to compete globally, we need to invest in that. I think for the most part, we've made a lot of progress recently, but we still have a long way to go here on the Space Coast in particular because of the transformation we've seen since the shuttle retirement of SpaceX and Blue Origin and Lockheed and Boeing and OneWeb and the supply chain that's coming into that. It's really stressing the workforce, the talent pipeline, which is bad across the country, but it's particularly acute here right now. And it's not just for the big guys. We're hearing consistently that the big guys come in and they plunder the talent from the existing supply chain of small and medium-sized enterprises. And that's a real big problem because if you're a mom and pop shop doing machining for Lockheed and companies like that, and we have a number of them, you get Northrop Grumman coming in who can offer you a benefits package and a salary that's way above what the local guys can offer. And that just puts pressure on it that builds. And we need to be able to aggressively recruit and grow our talent if we're going to compete.
I appreciate that. Senator Brandis, a question that kind of aligns with that tightness, so to speak, of our talent pipeline. So I know that you've one of the big things that we got to be able to do in order to drive a growth is having that talent. And you've done some work and you have some experience where we've been able to tap into and leverage some alternate type workforce pools. Specifically, I'm thinking about work with prisons and so on. And I think about some work that's being done in Norway where they're transforming their whole penal system, their prisons, to be able to better utilize those resources. What are your thoughts of how Florida or how our nation can leverage that underutilized workforce or population?
Sure. So I think to go back to Speaker Feeney's point, right now we're facing a globally acute problem of workforce shortage. I mean, I can tell you of restaurants that I can go to in Tallahassee and St. Petersburg, where I live, that say, we have a limited number of dining options, not because because of our concern over COVID, but because we can't hire people. And so we have really a strong limit just on overall hiring. And that's particularly acute in the prison system. I toured a prison last week. They had 135 vacancies and they had 3 applicants in that one prison. So I think we have to recognize that in the short term, we have an acute problem with hiring overall, largely, that's probably somewhat driven by the federal dollars for unemployment. But I think, really the question is, how do we create a better ecosystem here in Florida to encourage more individuals to look at manufacturing and recognizing that today's manufacturing is not what yesterday's manufacturing was, right? The jobs that are coming back in the manufacturing space are highly technical, that the lower technical jobs are largely being done overseas, and then the components are coming here and then requiring a lot more technical expertise. And so I think the question really is, how do we begin to foster that, one, at a younger age, two, how do we look at the alternative workforce that typically was not considered, like the inmates that getting trained so that they can participate in the workforce going forward. And three, how do we begin the conversation at the high school level and reintroduce manufacturing at the high school and middle school level, so that everybody doesn't think, hey, look, my only opportunity is to go to college. Oftentimes people in manufacturing jobs are making much more than a recent college graduate. And if you kind of scale it out over time, many people would have been better off going into a high skilled manufacturing job versus having spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a college and then graduating with a degree that pays $20,000 or $30,000 a year, when they could have made $50,000 or $60,000 a year starting off and grown from there. So it's really, how do we at multiple levels create an ecosystem that encourages people to look at different areas? But one of the things the legislature's got to do is allow people to work and maximize the work they can do. I think to Speaker Feeney's point, one of the reasons we miss out on nursing and advanced practicing physicians is because Florida doesn't allow people to practice at the top of their scope, doesn't allow people to do independent practice. We've got to allow for some of that to occur. In the manufacturing space, we've got to be focusing on high schools. We've got to be creating a pathway at the high school level for people to move directly into manufacturing positions. And that's going to take an effort by the legislature and an effort by the Department of Education to begin those conversations early.
You see traction building that's going to allow us to change our policy around, how teachers are graded. So for example, historically teachers get graded on, hey, how many students do we have going off to a 4-year college or university? Is there a lot of traction building that will support that? It's not just, a 4-year degree, but it's all these other things like apprenticeships and a lot of these other skilled trades that are very much so viable options for students. But not only that, also reintroduction of some of what we call SHOP, many years ago. Are we seeing much traction for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, if all you do is get somebody a degree, it's like you've left you've left them at the 10-yard line. The goal line is a job, right? It's not just a degree. How do we get people to get a job? And that's a conversation that needs to occur obviously in college, but it needs to be occurring in high school too. We need to show people and demonstrate to them what their earnings can be the second they get that high school diploma and they move forward if they have built skills in high school. And so I think there's going to be an effort by the legislature, with your help and others' help, to incentivize people in the high school level to start really thinking about these manufacturing careers and a pathway forward for them to build a life on. But the same thing happens with those people that are incarcerated in Florida's prison system. We have 80,000 people incarcerated in Florida's prison system. Thousands of them are going to get out every single year. The question is, how are we training them while they're incarcerated so that when they get out, they're ready to take on and have skills that they didn't have when they came in? To just give you some context, about 40,000 of the inmates in the Florida prison system can't read at the 6th grade level. And so sometimes it's just basic literacy that we've got to focus in on. And then it's building skills beyond that. So we have our work cut out for us in the prison system, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing that hard, because ultimately we know that the best outcome for these individuals and what leads them to a better outcome for the rest of their life is if they leave incarceration and they can have a job. Same with those that are in high school. If they can leave high school and immediately have an employer tied to them, then they're going to have a great, successful 20s and 30s, which is going to lead to a great, successful rest of their life. And so what can we do earlier to intervene, begin to have these conversations? And what kind of conversations should we be having in the high schools? To me, that's bringing back SHOP, that's bringing back some of these other core courses and showing them that there's a pathway to a great life in the manufacturing career space.
So over the last couple of years, we've taken like a 1-2 punch. The red tide, and then last year, and it's still ongoing, is COVID, where we saw a lot of the retail sector get shut down. Are we seeing an overall sense and recognition that we have to diversify the economy, and manufacturing is a key component of that from what you're seeing?
Was that directed at me, Bain?
Yes, Speaker Feeney.
Yeah, so I think absolutely yes. And to put this in perspective, Florida's manufacturing community produces about 5.6% of our gross state product. Compare that to an Indiana, which is about 25 or 27%, or Ohio or Michigan, where it's in the 20s, even Washington State. So we're very low. But the good news is a lot of those old manufacturing industries are becoming, I don't want to say obsolete, but they are not next generation exciting stuff. I mean, Dale represents the space community, which is really exciting. And the opportunity for Florida is multifold. Number one, we've got 15 ports in Florida. No other state has that many serious ports. The most expensive thing that leaves Florida is an empty container, because we're offloading things for our consumers from China and the Far East and the Mid East and Europe. If we can't put goods back on those ships, then we are not producing jobs that are Florida-made, Florida-produced materials. We're not helping the ports or the international import-export guys. So there's a huge opportunity, number one. Number two, the fact that manufacturing jobs today are high-skilled, high-tech means that it's a great job opportunity, as Senator Brandes said. But the third thing I want to emphasize, not only do we have to start in early learning, incentivize teachers to be able to teach, to your point, Bain, not just to graduation rates or getting people through and into a 4-year degree that may or may not produce a job. We got to get teachers excited about teaching math and science and STEM skills at an early age. And then internships. The National Association of Manufacturing, our partners at the federal level, has a program that basically Toyota designed through the NAMS Manufacturing Institute, where you can go in high school and get some real life experience and get excited about producing things and learn what the great jobs are. And then finally, I want to say, not only is the talent pipeline start from early learning all the way through continuing education after people are adults and they repurpose their skills, like we're talking about in the prison population that Senator Brandes is emphasizing. We got to get parents to understand that the manufacturing jobs of today are not the manufacturing jobs where you used to be essentially slave labor for 14, 16 hours a day in some dirty, sweaty environmentally unfriendly factory. Nowadays, you are really producing the next generation of the world's goods, and you are loading those containers so that we make a ton of money in Florida shipping the top-notch produced technical products all over the world. We have an opportunity to do that, and I'm excited about it.
So so oftentimes, we look at the aspect of the talent pipeline, specifically with the high schools or, maybe even some of these technical colleges. And, we talk about being, engaging teachers and guidance counselors and students into the opportunities surrounding, high-skilled work and manufacturing specifically. And, some of the learning that's associated with some of these high skills require equipment. And a lot of times that's where a lot of schools are challenged with being able to get that equipment. So what are your thoughts on how, how they could be a public-private partnership to enable, more of these schools to acquire more of the equipment that's needed to do hands-on training? Are there any thoughts on that and what we can learn, or copy and paste from elsewhere on how we build it out? Because that continues to be a challenge.
Well, I'll be real quick here. The Florida Makes, our host for today's event, has put together a supply chain database that is tied into the national supply chain database, which will allow every company in Florida to find customers that are Florida-based, but more importantly, people that can produce parts of the product that your company produces. You can find Florida companies rather than waiting to get shipped products from overseas or Puerto Rico or another state. As part of that database, Florida Makes and Space Florida and AIF in Florida have built a database called Connects, and it can help not only find you workforce eventually, but also allow companies that have excess materials, excess computers, or items that are no longer that they don't need anymore. They can provide those directly to universities, to technical schools, to community colleges. We ought to incentivize, and maybe through a tax credit, and tell companies that rather than just reselling your used materials that might be still very useful in the learning environment to a college or a university or a high school shop teacher, those materials can be invaluable. And based on what your community needs are, for example, if you're a Lockheed Martin and you've got a big facility in an area producing things, as you rotate out some of your equipment that might be a year or 2 or 3 years old, provide them to the local middle schools, high schools, technical, and you're doing yourself a favor if you're Lockheed, because you are providing them the equipment that students locally can train on and be prepared to enter the workforce in the Lockheed Martin in this hypothetical. So there are ways to do this, but coordinating it is a challenge, and that's why this Connects database is so opportunistic.
Certainly valid point. And if for you, Dale, so thinking long term, specifically around space, we've got China that's in the race. We got Russia, we got India, we got Japan now, and others. How do we plan now to compete in space when the competition, so to speak, will actually be in space? There's a new frontier. There's untapped resources. How do we prepare ourselves?
Well, I think the key thing is recognizing that we are confronting a challenge. Much of America's best success, particularly the golden age of the space program, was recognized we were competing with the Soviets in a grand race. And not unlike that time, we're now competing in a new frontier where there will actually be for-profit enterprises, genuine activity occurring, value added, both people and manufacturing and goods and tourism and recreation and mining and energy production, all happening in space. But yet we are now confronting China, which is an economic power the likes of which this country has not confronted in more than a century. And we are not going to succeed in that enterprise unless we take a whole of America approach, not just whole of government, but all of us as Americans in meeting that challenge. And kudos to Senator Brandes for recognizing the fact that we have to incorporate everybody. We don't have the luxury of not including those who are coming out of the correction system. They have to be a part of this process, and we need to be educating them while they're incarcerated so that when they come out, they are productive, because that's, we need them, and two, that's the cost-effective way to address that. But one of the challenges we confront right now is we don't have enough trainers to educate and train the people to work on the CNC machines, to do the apprenticeships. It's a big problem. We're trying to scale up. The Tallahassee's done some great work lately of improving our apprenticeship program, and we're trying to scale up to where we need to be, but we're running into some real obstacles in terms of just having the talent. Who's going to train the people who come in and want to be apprenticeship? And, business doesn't really, we've got these people on the line. How do, we don't have time to send them off to school to train kids, but yet they're the ones who need the work, need the talent. So we've got a lot of work to do. But fortunately, I think the pain point on industry for this talent is such that they're already anxious to talk about what do we need to do to participate in making a more robust talent pipeline. And we really need that in Florida, and we've been successful. Our challenge is now going to be, how do we build communities that the young, high-skilled talent wants to continue to work in? Because we traditionally have had to go to Seattle and Austin and Denver and Los Angeles to, poach talent for SpaceX and Blue Origin and the others. But as we're getting successful, those other communities are realizing, hey, there's a lot of talent in Florida, and they're coming here to poach. So we got to start playing defense as well as offense. And that's a tough job. It's a good problem to have, but we need to be all together in confronting that challenge.
Yeah. So I want to, if each one of you could just, before we go to question and answers, just take 30 seconds closing remarks, from what we've learned today and your overall perspective and optimism. We'll start with you, Dale, seeing that you.
Sure. I guess what we're going to need to do is we've been trying to take advantage of the fact that right now the Cape Canaveral Spaceport is the primary, most successful spaceport on the planet, and our goal, the Space Florida vision, if you will, is to see to it that Florida remains the primary port of entry and departure for the human enterprise that is going to continue to grow for the next centuries in the future, and that we are the equivalent of what the Port of London was for the British Empire centuries ago, the primary conduit and focal point for people and goods and services and ideas and concepts. And that's a great opportunity for the state of Florida, because space is as successful as any enterprise in inspiring young people to go into the math and science. And we need to leverage that, take advantage of that. But our success in achieving that is going to be tapping into all of what Florida brings to the table in terms of industrial capability, whether it's medical manufacturing, medical device manufacturing, modeling and simulation, aviation, MRO activity down in South Florida, the cyber security technology that's going on in the Panhandle. Florida's got a great opportunity to leverage all of its strengths, and if we do that, we'll be in good shape.
And Senator Brandes, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think there's never been a better time for students to come out of high school and be able to get a job. The unemployment rate of Florida is, in the mid 4s. It's lower than it is around the rest of the nation. We've got more and more industry that's coming here because Florida is now considered a high-tech state in many ways. And that's a pretty seismic shift that we've seen. Governor Scott's tax credits for manufacturers have done an incredible job. of helping grow the manufacturing. And so we're kind of a victim of our own success. Now we have to set forth on our K through 12 education system and our collegiate system and help focus those as well. And so it's more STEM education, it's more manufacturing education, and it's more targeted, targeted programs at certain students who are unlikely to go to college, that or those that are college bound, but we can get them into the manufacturing professions earlier. To me, that's where we've got to be focusing our investments. Not everybody is designed to go to college, and for those that aren't, we can get them involved and engaged in manufacturing earlier and show them that there's a career path and an opportunity for them to have a great life doing high-skilled manufacturing profession. To me, that's something that Florida education system has to really embrace. And historically, it has not been that way. Historically, the path forward has been, let's get you a high school diploma and then a college degree. Right now, it should be, let's get you a high school diploma and a job. And to me, that if we can begin to foster that message and show people a career opportunity moving forward, which is going to take business industry engagement, then we can have real success in a state. But we've never been in a better place and in a better time to tackle this problem at scale than we have right now.
Then Speaker Feeney, last but not least.
Well, I appreciate what what Jeff and Dale said. I think that's exactly right. To put it in a little bit of global and historic perspective, from roughly the 1990s for 25 years, the world was engaged in globalization. I mean, Ronald Reagan helped inspire policies that reduced conflict, reduced taxes, became much more pro-enterprise. Even China in the 90s and early 2000s was run by engineers that believed in building things, and they were kind of communist capitalists, as oxymoronic as that sounds. That's no longer true. The world is deglobalizing. Countries that are successful after the pandemic and after international challenges, conflicts seem to be increasing. Countries that are really successful and confident, and this is the same with states in the United States, are producing most of their essential materials, whether it's telecommunications that can't be spied on from China, whether it's defense materials, whether it's medical equipment, whether it's pharmaceuticals, or whether it's basic food supply, and manufacturing at home and near home by reliable sources is more important than it has been in probably 40 or 50 years. Our space industry leads the world in technology, but unless we build that robust workforce, talent pipeline from an early age on, we simply will not be able to compete with much larger populated countries like China and India. And of course, then you've got the Russians and other threats. We can do this, but we need to be focused on making sure that which is essential is built and designed close to home, and that means a highly skilled technical workforce.
And I'm encouraged by everything that we've talked about today, that in fact we've got a great challenge in front of us. We're a great nation, a great state, and we're able to seize the moment and really step up to the challenge. So I'm really optimistic, and I'm really energized by what we've talked about today, and know that there is a lot of a desire to go forward and make this happen. And so at this time, we will proceed to take our question and answers. But again, I want to say to Senator Brandes, thank you. Speaker Feeney, thank you. And to Dale Kitchum, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Senator Brandes, Bain, Dale, and Tom. We've got lots of work to do to elevate manufacturing in the legislative session, but we are so lucky to have in Florida legislators and advocates like you who care and understand our industry. We also have organizations who understand and support manufacturing and our cause to advance the manufacturing industry. Special thanks to Kaufman and Rawson, our key sponsor for the Technology Acceleration segment. Also thanks to Synovus and the Florida Economic Development Council and all the rest of the companies and partners on the screen behind me. These conversations would not have been possible if it wasn't for their financial and in-kind contributions. So to our sponsors, our panelists, our speakers, and moderators, thanks go to all of you for your participation in today's successful session. The final segment of our summit, Outlook 2022, will be a hybrid event taking place October 26th in the afternoon during Manufacturing Month. You will have the opportunity to attend either virtually, like you have today, or in person. The event will recap the 3 previous segments on business growth, talent development, and technology acceleration. A big part of the event will also focus on what is next in Florida's manufacturing sector and what each and every one of us can do to improve our ecosystem so that the industry continues to grow, thrive, serve as a good way to diversify our economy here in Florida. The closing reception at that event will honor the Sterling Manufacturing Business Excellence Award winners and present the Bob Provatola Manufacturing Leadership Award winner. A reminder, those nominations close this Friday, and we hope that you'll all send someone in for that award. If you have already registered, keep an eye out for the email confirming how you plan on participating, virtual or in person. As you know, with in-person events, we need to account for the catering and have an accurate head count, and that'll be most important for our team. If you have not registered yet, please visit floridamakesmore.com to reserve your place. So to close our program for today, we have the person who leads the organization and who has dedicated his entire career to the advancement of manufacturing, the Florida Makes CEO, Kevin Carr.
You're being nice.
And he hired me a few years ago, and he's regretted it ever since. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, June. And thank you for stepping in and being our MC for this segment of the MakeMore conference. You know, I recently had a conversation with actually one of the speakers, I won't point them out, about how their business was going through this, you know, tumultuous time that we're experiencing now with COVID. And he says it's never been harder. He has an opportunity where there's very high customer demand, and supplies, there's a tremendous shortage of, can't even buy metal. So manufacturers are particularly challenged going through COVID, and I think that challenge will continue beyond that. The biggest one being, as you hear from everybody, and you heard in our last big segment, the ability to find a skilled workforce. So this is a context not just for COVID, but I think a continuing challenge of what we're facing in the future in terms of competitiveness. And if COVID taught us anything, it taught us how to be resilient and how to pivot. And those companies that were really adept or already ahead in the use of technologies like the Industry 4.0 technologies we've been talking about for the past couple of days, they've been particularly successful through this process. You know, in Florida, one of our biggest challenges as a state, as a manufacturing economy, is our productivity. And I always say there's 3 drivers, and they really are represented in the 3 different segments that we had so far. First, it's about business growth. You need to grow your business. You need to grow into higher value businesses to push that productivity equation. Second, it's about upskilling our workforce. And we spent a couple days, about a month ago, really focusing on that factor of upskilling the workforce. But third, and really the topic of the past couple days, is that issue of adopting newer, more advanced digital technologies, Industry 4.0 technologies. I know they sound like something new, but it's really the next progression of things that we've been doing for years, you know? They seem radical. We hear robots, we hear automation, we hear sensors, and it sounds like, you know, bells are going off. But if you think about the past several decades, we've been focused, you know, initially on the quality movement, which has really been focused on improving our product and eliminating variation. And we've been focused on lean. I would say that's been a focus over the past 30 years, where we're really looking at waste minimization or elimination in many cases. 4.0 technologies really take those digital sensors, those data analytic methodologies, and begin to apply them in the same way and begin to refine even better elimination of variation, even better elimination of waste. And that's kind of what they're focused on. So by applying those technologies, we're going to remain competitive. And we're going to remain competitive at a time where, you know, we're seeing a shrinking workforce, our skilled workers retiring and leaving, and where we're challenged in particular to bring new people into that pipeline, into that workforce, but requiring more advanced skills than you know, the more trade-oriented skills of the past. These people have to be digitally savvy. They have to know their way around data and reading data. So that's particularly important. And I'm convinced that companies will make that turn. I think we can do that. I think the challenge of our manufacturing ecosystem, and by that I mean all of our public and private assets that are out there to try to help these companies, a lot of the people that used to speak over the past couple of days, our challenge really is to help those businesses accelerate through the process of adopting those technologies. I don't think it's out of reach. I think it's very capable. We have a state with many, many assets for people, for business growth, and for technology. Our universities, our private consultants, we have those assets. How we apply them, how we organize and apply them to advance our businesses is really going to define how successful we are. June?
Thank you, Kevin. To close today's session and the technology acceleration session, you now get to go to networking, and it continues. So connect with Florida's manufacturing stakeholders at this virtual exhibition hall for another half hour, and then come back on demand in person in October. So you'll see two pop-up windows that will appear on your screen momentarily. One is for you. Please complete a short evaluation of the survey for today's sessions. And another one you can click on to access live networking. When you click on the live networking pop-up, it will take you to a Zoom room where you can network live with other attendees. I believe Dave Dragon will be hosting that. So stop by and say hello. You can also take time to visit our partners and sponsors in the Made in Florida Expo Showcase. We'll see you all in October. Thanks for attending.